My name is Adam Steltzner. I and the rest of the folks you'll hear here work up at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory up in Pasadena. And my job is I happen to lead a team of folks who are responsible for designing and developing the systems that we use to get the next rover onto the surface of Mars. That spacecraft launched in November of last year, and August 5th, it'll be hitting the surface of Mars one way or another. So to start our story, I'd like to start it about 8 years ago when the MER rovers, the Mars exploration rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, came into the surface, landed on the surface of Mars. This process is something we call entry, descent, and landing. It starts with running into the atmosphere very quickly, about 13,000 miles an hour. After burning a hole in the sky of Mars, we open a parachute at about 1,000 miles an hour, which slows us down to about 200 miles an hour. There's not a lot of atmosphere on the surface of Mars. And then finally, 8 years ago, we lowered this tetrahedron wrapped in a very, very special set of airbags that were developed by us and inflated them. And then just prior to running into the ground, we lit off a set of rockets that slowed our arrest. We cut ourselves free, and we bounced. And bounced. And bounced. 27 times for Spirit and 33 or so for Opportunity. 2 rovers, each on the opposite side of the planet of Mars, landing 21 days apart. Guaranteed to last for 90 days, and Opportunity is still going. A little bit like maybe it'll hit 10 years, right? That's kind of crazy. This whole process is EDL, and it's got bits and pieces of it that make it quite a bit of a challenge. That little rover was the size of a desk. The actual heart of it was not much bigger than a microwave oven. And when we had successfully landed twice on the surface of Mars, that ends up being a challenge. About 2/3 of the things that go to Mars fail. So when the team had done it twice in a row, January of 2004, we felt very pumped up. Very psyched, and we really felt that we were ready for anything. And so NASA kind of agreed and allowed us to think big for the next expedition to Mars. So, all EDL has got 4 basic bits to it, and it's all about knocking down that incredible energy of motion you have when you hit the surface of the atmosphere at Mars. In powers of 10, 10,000 miles an hour, 1,000 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, and then the last, but certainly not least, is that final mile an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 miles an hour. You know, if you run into a telephone pole at 10 miles an hour in your car, it's a drag, but your car is going to survive. It's going to be easy. That last bit is the hardest for us. That last little skosh of energy is really, really quite difficult. So when we were thinking big, when we were pumped and ready for anything, we decided to go big. So at the very far end there, you have the Mars Pathfinder rover, Sojourner. In 1997, we put that on the surface. It's 25 kilograms. The Mars Exploration Rover, Spirit and Opportunity, 175 kilograms. Curiosity, which will hit the surface of Mars on the 5th of August of this year, almost 1,000 kilograms. Larger than anything that anyone's put on another planet as far as a rover is concerned. And bigger than a Mini Cooper, in fact, in human sense. So big rover meant that we had to struggle and innovate. Size is important. This big rover carries much, much more science instruments and science equipment than all of our previous rovers combined. Right? MER took 10 kilos, a heavy lunchbox. We've got 180 kilos. That's, a couple of people worth of science instruments. magnetometers. We've got on the top of the mast there, we've got that thing called ChemCam. It's actually a high energy laser that vaporizes the surface of rocks from a distance away. And then with a telescope that's co-mounted, it does spectronomy on the vapor that's emitted from the vaporization and decides if the rock's interesting enough to go drive the rover over and do more intimate science with. It's got a radioisotopic thermonuclear power system, the RTG there in the back. This means that the power will last for essentially ever, right? It starts out at 100 watts, not much, but enough to run a rover. And 12 years from now, it'll be at 70 watts. And another 12 years from that, it'll be at 50 watts, and it'll keep on going. We did this because we wanted this rover to go anywhere on the planet. Spirit and Opportunity were solar-powered rovers. They can only go near the equator. Now, as it ends up being, the scientists decided they wanted us to go to the equator. So we're taking our nuclear-powered rover to the equator. It's got a whole host of stuff on it, of a lot of interesting things. I won't go into all of them, but very importantly, we actually drill into rocks, powder up samples, and then dispatch it to various analytic chemistry experiments inside the rover to allow ourselves to better understand the composition of the rocks. Again, it's big. Here's the Mini Cooper sitting inside that back shell, that aero shell, right, that protects us as we enter. It's so big we had to do lots of very big things. Here's the world's biggest wind tunnel. It's up at NASA Ames, and here we're about to deploy the world's largest supersonic parachute, something that we had to develop. We do this testing because sometimes it doesn't go well. This was not a good day, but you learn from that and you come back. Here's that same wind tunnel. That's 8 stories high and 120 feet across. So it's, you can actually fly an airplane, and they do occasionally fly airplanes in that wind tunnel. So there's a successful opening, good shoot, as we say. We also did let me make sure it's not going to go. We also, the world's largest mortar for firing the world's largest supersonic. You got to get it behind you pretty fast. So we had lots of big things, including all that work on the parachute. But as I mentioned, that touchdown system, that was the thing we struggled with the most. The airbags that we'd used before, they don't scale up when you go as big as that Curiosity rover is. You can't use a legged lander like we've used before because we wanted to go to places that might not be very stable. So, well, I'll let you see for yourself the kind of system that we had. We looked at a lot of different ones, from the airbags to legged landers. We even invented a sort of an evolutionary dead end called a pallet, a really squat, wide, multi-legged rover, multi-legged lander that would allow us to have greater stability, but it ended up that it would too easy to explode when you landed because you had all your descent engines underneath you, so we decided not against that. We ended up sort of going for something maybe a little along that direct placement, as you'll see here. So Sunday night at 10:30, August 5th, put it in your calendars. There's going to be a Mindshare event associated with it. This big beast, that's the largest aeroshell in the world. We do some interesting things. It's a symmetric vehicle, but we fly it with asymmetric mass properties, so it flies at a cant, and that cant develops lift, and then we turn that lift back and forth and up and down in the atmosphere to allow us to steer to a much more precise point on the surface of Mars than we've ever been able to do. It still has a lot of heat, right? That's about 2,000 degrees Celsius. There's certainly enough energy. When we show up at the surface of Mars, there's enough energy for us to vaporize the entire rover. So you have to manage that energy continuously. Parachute. We very much hope it looks like that on August 5th. And then about a kilometer and a half or so above the surface, we start looking at the ground with a radar, and then decide to cut ourselves free fall for a moment, to get away from the parachute before lighting our engines. This system can land in truly terrifying terrain that our previous landing systems could never think of. This site here, this is actually a digital elevation map of one of the candidate sites, not the one we ended up going to, but it would be completely inconceivable with the other landing systems. We have got a great video camera on the rover looking forward. It'll start seeing things from as soon as heat-shield separation, and allow us to localize where we are on the surface of Mars. And then just prior to landing, I know it, please do believe in me. I'm not some complete nut job up here, or I might be a complete nut job, but I'm a professional nut job. This is called the sky crane maneuver. We lower the rover, and then the two bodies descend until the rover touches down. We cut the bridles free, and that thing, which we call the descent stage, flies off to complete its mission in a puff of smoke that we never really show on the video. And we leave the rover ready for surface operations. Wheels down, power positive, telecom green, on the surface of Mars, ready to begin its mission. So think about the Mindshare on the 5th of August, and wish us luck. Thank you very much.